Hi there, it's August the 12th, and we're continuing our progress through Paul's first letter to the Corinthians. We're in chapter 7, and we're completing the chapter from verses 25 through to 40. Right at the beginning of this reading that we're in here, Paul says something quite important. He says that what he's writing here is not something he's got directly from the Lord, but is really his personal view, his personal opinion. So it's interesting he's making this distinction because he's not wanting to pressure people into doing what he says. This is actually quite important when we're reviewing the kind of material that's in this chapter, because he's not laying down hard and fast rules. He's speaking particularly about unmarried people and married people, and because remember, the Corinthians have said that it's better not to marry. They've written to him saying we think it's better to remain single. So Paul is actually speaking into a context here. Now, it could be, some scholars suggest that this period in history, this time when Paul is writing, is actually one of great hardship and great need. There perhaps is famine through the empire, there's a time of pressure, and therefore the idea of marrying and taking on responsibility for someone else, and particularly for children, may have been a very tough time. So it could just be that practical circumstances dictated that way. It could also be that Paul is thinking about the possible persecution and the possible pain and suffering that it would do seeing a spouse suffer or seeing children affected by parents suffering. We're not sure exactly what the circumstances are, but those are the kind of things that Paul could be speaking into. And so he's basically saying, if you are unmarried, don't rush, don't hurry to try and be married. If you're married, don't try and get unmarried, don't dissolve your marriage. He basically says keep as you are at the moment, and particularly keep devoted, keep focused on the Lord. Don't let anything divert you from your love for the Lord. He says in verse 38, that he wants people to be free from worry. He particularly says here that single people are in a situation where if they don't have a spouse to be concerned about, they can wholeheartedly devote themselves to the Lord without any other kind of consideration. For those who are married, for those who are, if you like, re-imaging God with another, then naturally there's going to be a working together. There's going to be a coming together. So you can't just act solo. There's always a togetherness in this. And that also has an effect on our relationship with the Lord, Paul says. So he's not trying to place restrictions on people. He's actually just wanting to encourage them to keep devoted to the Lord. However, he says if this causes problems, if someone's trying to live this celibate life, and particularly for those who are betrothed, because betrothal process could be for quite a long time in these ancient times, he says if anyone's betrothed and is really sorely tempted by their physical desire, their physical attraction to their fiancé, he says then don't be afraid to get married. This is okay. It's not a sin to do that. And remembering, he's still speaking here in his own personal opinion. He's not trying to drive people, he's not directing people, he's actually giving his wisdom and his insight. Obviously he also says to widows that if widows are in their widowhood, that it's probably better for them to remain in widowhood. It's better for them to remain single than to marry. But if they marry, they're not doing anything to displease the Lord. I think it's important here to remember that Paul, as I said, is writing into a context where the Corinthians are writing to him about singleness and marriage, and it seems that they're writing to kind of put singleness above marriage and kind of saying that physical relations are not good. Paul is saying, look, it's good to be single, it's good to be married. Don't hurry, don't be in haste to try and change your status, especially in difficult times, especially in times of hardship. But if you do marry, if you do find that person to be with for the rest of your life, then that's also a good thing. The beautiful thing here is that Paul is giving room for different approaches. He's giving room for different convictions. And we need to be sure as well that as we help people, as we share wisdom with people, as we share life with people, that we don't try and direct or control people, but that we make sure that we share wisdom with them that leaves them the space to hear themselves from the Spirit of God. Have a very good August the 12th.